Let's get back to Yu-Gi-Oh a little bit. I have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I assume you watched the anime. Who would you say were your favorite characters from the anime?
From the was as I said before, because not to mention he's the big comic relief guy as well, and
Yeah.
that's the kind of person that I like to be. I like to be like a bit of a goofball when it's appropriate to be a goofball. I love being the goofball. I love being the jokester, but I can also be serious when like the situation like comes to it, like Joey does whenever when he was like fighting for his sister, to get the surgery to not become blind, like
One of
that
the
kind of thing.
best
So
storylines in
Joey
any
Wheeler is
anime.
definitely one of
Sorry,
them.
I had to say it was so dramatic. Like even me as like a 7-year-old, I'm like, wow, this is pretty heavy. You need to win that $3 million, Joey. You need to get your sister's eyesight back.
Yeah, got to get that eyesight back. I love that storyline,
Yeah,
and it showed like both sides of what Joey is. Like you can see like the comedy part of it, which I love, but then when it comes time to being serious, he can be serious, maybe crack a joke here and there, which is what I don't mind. I don't mind some light humor in some serious situations. So got that balance right is where I love Joey so much, and again, especially when his duels too. Again, his reactions that when things don't go his way, it's very comical, and like I love watching comedies when I watch TV. I love to laugh. That's like my kind of style. So Joey Wheeler is definitely up there. And probably another character I like. You say, sorry, not you say, Jaden from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, because again, he kind of has the same personality. He's that funny guy. He's just maybe not quite as smart, but it's funny. He's like an idiot savant. He's dumb in real life. You put him in a dueling scene, he's still a little bit dense here and there, but he's actually incredibly intelligent in the game when he's playing it, and that's it's so funny, it's mesmerizing. But again, it shares that same personality, that positive, fun personality. And but like when again like it comes time to throw down, we can throw down. Like so, like don't underestimate the Joker. Pretty much is what I want to call those guys. They're the Jokers, and what are Jokers in poker? They fit in any hand. They fit in any hand. That's what they're useful in any hand. So that's what they are in a sense, that they're jokers. Don't count them out. Don't underestimate them. And that's what I love about Joey and Yusei. Plus, like, and they're underdogs as well. And I'd like to consider myself a bit of an underdog, considering growing up when I was a kid, I was always like one of the shortest people in the class. I was the smallest. So like I always had something to prove. I had that kind of mentality growing up. So I like that underdog mentality that I have. And it's funny now that like I'm not to toot my own horn, like one of like the top players in my region, and it's like now I've grown I'm old enough to see myself grow into the villain in the sense now that I've become like I'm no longer the underdog per se.
that's awesome. Oh wow. Okay, so what were your favorite decks to play? Competitive or janky or techie? It doesn't matter. Please don't say chaos.
No, definitely. One of my favorite decks called ET for Diamond Dude Turbo,
Okay. Yeah.
and just to quickly go over the premise of that deck, the whole premise of the deck was just to basically like put a ton of spells in your graveyard or abuse it with Diamond Dude. Diamond Dude would basically like you look at the top card of your deck. If it's a normal spell, you get to activate it next turn and without like any activation requirements. So I could like so let's say there's like a card that requires me to pay 2,000 life points. If I flip that card off the top of the deck with Diamond Dude, I don't have to pay that, and I could just get the free effect of it. And that's what the whole deck was, and it was meant to like kill your opponent in roughly like one turn or maybe 2 turns. That's what the whole deck was. It was so much speed, but it was so calculating, and you had to adjust yourself on the fly so hard that no play was linear. You could take so many different paths in order to win your matches, and that was also the very first deck I won my first regional with. So, and that deck was written off at that point. It wasn't considered the best deck anymore, but I took it to the event and I won. I was the only player running that deck in that regional, and I won it all. So, and that kind of started a little bit of my stardom, and I use that in quotations. That kind of helped me a little bit because it got me more noticed in a sense. Like people kind of knew me for a personality, but people didn't know me then for my dueling skills. So ever since that regional, I got taken a little bit more seriously at that point in time. And then I started topping more and more regionals and more events. And then I just got better and better and better. And then people regard me now as like, okay, he's actually a pretty good player now. Like we can't laugh at him and take him lightly anymore. That kind of thing. So Diamond Dude Turbo definitely is one of my favorite decks that I've had. And Just trying to think of another favorite deck. I would probably go with what we call a teledad format. So which was consisting of like emergency teleport and dark arm dragon, because I always thought that it, I was like playing the decks where the better player wins almost all the time. That's what I love, because that deck was a great measure of, if you win, you pretty much earned it, especially in the mirror match. You earn those wins. You're not lucking your way out of winning those. You won it because you actually put forth the effort and like you outplayed your opponent to be able to win those games. Now, of course, there's the luck factor that's still involved, where sometimes like the lesser player can win, but almost always it was the better player won. And it was such a great chess match going back and forth with players with that deck, and that's why I regard it as like one of the best decks, because again, like I always love the better player one format. I love those kind of decks. I love those formats, and I don't think that really exists anymore in current Yu-Gi-Oh right now because of it.
Yeah, you know what's funny? That was a good era of Yu-Gi-Oh for me. I stopped playing around Yadalock Chaos because it was annoying, and then I got back when E-Heroes were in, and so it wasn't like that far off of a break. But like E-Heroes, D-Heroes, and then when Synchros came around, like I enjoyed a lot of those eras. But then when you had Dark Arm Dragon and you had a lot of like top eights that would have like five or six of the same cookie cutter deck, it really did come down to skill, because you were going to encounter the mirror, but it was like, how do you outplay your opponent when they're playing the exact same thing as you? What tech are they running that maybe will throw you off a little bit? It was very interesting, and I think that was, at least in my opinion, I don't know what others would say, I think that was the high point for competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, because it was just interesting. Like, you really had to know the game. You couldn't have just said like, okay, like what's popular, let's run with it, because you could be throwing cards into your graveyard that you don't know if you're actually going to need or how to utilize them.
Yeah. So what I love about playing the mirror match is that when both players are playing the same decks, there are no surprises as far as what cards are going to be played slash not be played. So you can't resort to like that part of the surprise element. So what you have to do is you have to rely on like your fundamentals, your dueling skill, and a bit of psychology to be able to like to beat your opponent. So now like your bluffing has to come into play. Your fake tells have to come into play here now. You have to like really like get your opponent like in a corner now, like mentally and psychologically, to be able to take them down at this point, because you're already running the same deck. So it's not a matter of whose deck is better, it's who plays the cards better and who adapts to the situation better in that sense. And again, it
A
draws
chess
down to,
mentality.
yeah, it's a chess mentality, it's experience, because again, like when you play chess, both players are on an even keel. The only difference is that maybe the queens are positioned just because of the color. Queens always on the color, so they're positioned a little bit differently on the board. And then who goes first. But relatively, it's an equal game throughout. And then that's kind of with Yu-Gi-Oh. You got to rely on your skill at this point in time to be able to play the game, rather than just lucking out on like a benefactor of like running something that your opponent doesn't know of, like capitalizing on like ignorance, quote unquote. So
Yeah.
that's what it is, and I love that. And like winning a mirror match is pretty satisfying, knowing that like you really had to outplay your opponent to be able to win it, rather than just relying on like a trick or anything like that. You use your pure skill to really win a game, as opposed to like just kind of lucking yourself out. Because I don't get a lot of satisfaction winning by luck. Like I'll take it, but I don't get as much satisfaction of when I win like a long, hard fought game that I use like all of my skill to win, and like
Yeah.
I crafted it perfectly to be able to win. That's what I love.